Hey, in this episode, I might get a little banged up. Hey, hello, this is Bruce at Camshaft Garage. Going to do something a little different today. I'm going to do a restoration update or a restoration blog, whatever. This is first week of June. I've been down the last couple weeks in May. I had some elective surgery on my nose to fix my sinuses that I've had all my life. It still sounds like I have a cold, but that'll come out here in another week. Anyhow, today I'm going to talk about what I did before I took a couple weeks off. Working on this motor over here. I'll show you here in a minute what's going on with this. This is out of a 51 Jeep Wagon, and when we get to this, I'll put a picture of what that is. And then the 31 Model A Victoria. Now, you've seen me driving this around in a couple of videos. It runs and drives fine. However, I'm heading home, I don't know, in May. It was cold outside. I'm about 500 yards from my house. All of a sudden, I hear this popping sound up through the carburetor, like a backfiring sound. It's just kind of bam, pop, 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 like that. I'm like, well, that don't sound right. So I nursed it home and pulled it in, and I kind of looked it over. I thought, well, it's probably got a burnt valve. That's probably what it is. I don't know. So I thought, well, we'll tear into that and see what's going on. It's kind of unique what happened. So I'm going to tell you what happened, and maybe you guys in the comments can see if any of the other Model A guys have ever had this problem before. It's definitely different. But anyhow, doing basically an in-frame major to repair this one. I could have probably pulled the motor out, been just as easy, but I didn't want to. So I'm going to take you over here and show you the Vicky, what happened to it. We got it all tore apart. I've got some parts on order, just waiting on them to come in to put it back together. Should be an easy fix. This one's a little bit more involved. But let's look around today and see what's going on here at Camshaft Garage. All right, so first we'll start here looking at the Vicky. So the first thing I did was popped off the valve cover to see what was going on with the valves. Now we'll show you a short little video of what was going on with them. All right, so you saw that quick little video, and you could see that the lifter was going up and down, but it wasn't even close to touching the spring. So I'm thinking, well, something's not right, because I looked up here at the valves. The valves was okay, none of them was cracked. They all was seated. This motor had been rebuilt. I bet it's only got a couple of thousand miles on it, but it's got probably 30 years since it was done. So anyhow, I thought, well, this is kind of unusual. I'll have to just go ahead and tear it on apart. So I took the oil pan off. Hello. Dang camera lighting. Where was I? Oh yeah, I took the oil pan off and looked up in there and immediately seen what was going on. So then I had to do the rest of the tear down. So what I'm doing here is I put wire ties around the lifters to hold them up so I can pull the cam out. Otherwise these would fall down and kind of hard to get the cam out. So that's what's going on with the little wire ties. And yes, it is possible to pull the camshaft out, which goes right here, out the front of the motor without actually jacking it up or pulling the motor out. And I've done this before, so this isn't my first rodeo. I want to take you over here and show you what's going on with the lifters. All right, so when I looked up inside, I seen something that was different. So all these lifters, or a tappet, these all go up in the block in that hole you've seen, and when the cam comes around, they follow this, and then this is what pushes them up and back down and opens your valves up. So they were all working, but this was the very back of the motor, but this last one. And it was working, but as you can see, it's got a little pad there that follows that. It was working, but the pad was down in the oil pan, and this was riding on the cam. Yeah. So broke the tappet in half, and this is a clean break too. I'm thinking you can probably see this. I get this close enough. It's a pretty clean break. Not really sure what caused this, other than maybe it wasn't hardened right. I mean, if you guys got any ideas, put something down in the description. Have a little discussion about this. I'm not really sure what caused this. I did think that the valves were out of adjustment. They made some noise. In fact, if you listen to the, I think it's number 63 video where maybe 61, where I changed the tire on the Oldsmobile and I go to town, you can hear them rattling inside the car. So they had some more slop than they needed to. And I don't know if, I don't know how, but maybe that slop was allowing this to do this number. But I don't. And I've checked the bosses. There's no wear. This is solid. It's not rocking back and forth, so that's not an issue. So I pulled the cam out. I'm not going to use this cam because it's just a little bit rough. I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not. It's just a little bit rough compared to, like, say, this one. And I've got another cam laying around here, so it's not like I don't have any cams. So we'll just, actually what I'm going to use this one for is I'm going to make a tool to screw on here and screw on the other cam, and I can just use this to put the new cam in. And I'll show you that when I put this car back together, because that's going to be one of my little tricks I do to put a camshaft in by yourself so you don't bang it all around and get it all messed up. But yeah, that's what happened. The tappet or the valve lifter broke off. This was down in the pan. I drained all the oil out of the pan. Now, the good news is it didn't run long enough to get any metal shavings in the oil. Oil looked fine. I don't really, this is all there was to it. So I'm not worried about metal shavings in the oil or up in the babbitt or anything. So I'm just going to, I'm going to put all new lifters in it, another cam, clean everything up, put it back together. So I don't think I hurt anything. But we'll go from there. Now I want to show you another issue that I'm debating. And here again, this will be your turn to comment, because you Model A guys, maybe you run into this before. I think it should be different than what it is, but what do I know? Anyhow, let's go look at that. I'm going to do a little demonstration on how a Model A oiling system works. So the oil pump's down in the pan. It comes up in here, and it's run off the camshaft. And then also the distributor comes down through here and hooks into the oil pump, and that's what drives your distributor. Well, anyhow, the oil all comes up this tube. It builds pressure and it comes up here, and it goes through this little hole right here. See this little tube lane here? So it blows all the oil up into here, into this first galley. And the reason I call this a galley, see this dam here? So what it does is it fills this up full of oil. This oil there's a hole right there for the front of the camshaft. I don't think you'll be able to see it, but there's a hole back there that goes to the front main. So after this thing fills up with oil, it overflows, comes down here, fills this up. You might notice there's a hole here. This is for the center main. This is how the gravity system works. The oil just flows down from gravity, and the oil is the main bearings. And here's the second dam right here. So this one's lower than this one. So it builds up, overflows, keeps oil there, keeps oil here, overflows, comes back here to the back hole for the rear main. There's the rear main. And there's a little tiny hole right there for the rear camshaft. The center camshaft is oiled all the time from this oil coming up. So when this fills up to just the lower level of the valve cover, there's a tube here, and you all see this tube. It goes from here back down here to the block. So what happens is all this oil runs through this tube after it fills this galley up, goes back down the block, and the whole process is all started over again. You know, one way you can tell if your motor's circulating oil is grab hold of that tube and see if it's hot, because that motor oil is going to get hot. So here's the problem I got. I'm hoping you can see this. Ford, when they casted these blocks, they'd take a hammer or a punch and they'd just poke a hole here to get a little oil on the timing gears. This hole looks excessively large to me. And in fact, I don't know, you'll be able to tell it, but if you draw a straight edge across here, you're probably going to be able to do it that anyway. Anyhow, that hole, well, it just seems to be the same height as this dam. So guess what? All the oil is going that way instead of going this way. When I tore this apart, this was the only oil. Dang, gummit. Did you see that? That's the second time that's happened. Nice lighting. We spare no expense here at Klepp's Garage. We got the best lighting. Well, this was the only oil that was in the whole valve tray area. It was right here. So I'm thinking it's getting stirred for oil. Now on another motor I've actually done a pressurized motor and it's altogether different, but on that motor, I even went so far as, because these bosses was wore out, I've drilled a little tiny 1/8 inch hole right here on each one of these bosses to get more oil on the lifters. I mean, you don't have to do that, but that's one of the tricks I've done. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to put a little bit of JB weld on here and block that up, because I don't think that's supposed to be there. Once again, here's your turn to comment. Put something in the comments, because I'm not an engine rebuilder. I just see things the way I think they ought to be done, and I look at stuff the way stuff ought to be mechanically how it should work. And I think that's a problem. But I'm going to show you the front of the hole here. You know, in the Model Ts, they've done the same thing between the second cylinder and the third cylinder. They just took a hammer and knocked a hole in the block so they could get the throttle rod through there. And this is just the same thing. It's just a big chipping hole there. But I think that hole's a little excessive myself. But I don't know. All right, so that's that. I'll take you over here and show you some of the parts that's off that thing. Here's the valve cover. This would be that one end, and here's the tube where the oil goes back down through here. This is something else you always want to check. You want to make sure this tube is clean, and you can take this off anytime on your car and clean this out. Make sure it's not filled up, because then you're not getting oil return. All right, so we're looking at the junk that's laying over here. I'm going to back up. This is the frame and the rear spring there for Nash's Model T Speedster. We started on this, I think, in February or March. He actually spray painted this, got the primer on it, and we was going to put the front and rear axle on it and then roll it back in the paint frame, paint the whole thing. Of course, life gets in the way and best laid plans get changed. So here's the rear axle that we rebuilt, and I'll put a link down here to show you the episode we done that. Here's the front axle. Once again, there was an episode that we showed doing that. Fortunately, I don't have an episode on building a Model T, but there's a rebuilt Model T engine, because I don't rebuild the Model T engines myself, so I didn't do a video on that. And then, of course, this is the wheels for his car. We got them on this makeshift paint stand. So we're going to sand them, roll them into the paint room, and paint them, and get this all assembled. So this is this still on the summer project, along with putting this back together. Of course, getting my health back into shape. And then we'll come over here and we'll look at this. All right, now we're going to talk about my 51 Willys Jeep Wagon. So we'll show you a picture of that. Why does it feel like I got a toothache? I thought they worked on my nose. Huh. I'll probably do a whole video on that wagon, because it's an interesting piece. It was like America's first utility vehicle, or SUV, because of the size it was and the cubic feet of room that was in there. Really a great vehicle. It's got a 3-speed transmission behind it with an overdrive. I've gotten 27 miles a gallon out of this thing on the road consistently, and probably 18 to 20 around town. Where it gets all its power at, over to the flathead. So Jeep for years had the 4-cylinder Go Devil flathead 4-cylinder, which is basically this block, except where these holes are at, there was another valve. So it was a flathead. You had 2 valves and a piston. This one, if you notice, has got 4 holes here, but no valves. It just has exhaust valves. And, well, where's the other valves at? Well, they're in the head. Let me show you this. So this is called an F head. Half the exhaust valves are in the block, and the intake valves are in the head, and they're directly over the piston, which gives it some extra horsepower. So here's a close-up of what happened to this motor. So what I mean by burnt valve, this is a typical example of burnt valve. So it's got a hole right here, as you can see, and it's split. So this is actually like burnt away. That's why I call it a burnt valve. So this will actually can split clear over the stem. The whole head can pop off if it keeps going. So this one was bad. This is number 4. Here's number 3 cylinder. Well, looky here, bad. Plus, this is the valve seat. This is supposed to be flush with the block. It's pushed the valve seat up. This is the one that originally caused the problem, was number 3, and I knew it was because I checked the valve clearance. But I'm looking at these other two. This one's got a split here, and I thought I seen one on here. But I'm sure all these are bad because they don't have hardened valve seats. So you need to run hardened valve seats or hardened valves on just the exhaust valves with today's unleaded gas. This one, of course, never had that in there. So we're going to get this one off to a machine shop and get this all fixed. And this motor was rebuilt back in the day because I used to drive this car to high school, and we had it all done back then. But that was in the early 70s, and unleaded was just coming out, and well, that was unheard of to put hardened valve seats in there. But now I think it's going to need a rebore, maybe even a sleeve. So let's look at that head. So this is the F head. So here is the top of the head. And I would pick this up, move it around, but I'm not supposed to lift over 10 pounds. I think that's more than 10 pounds. So anyhow, your spark plugs are here. Here's your intake valves. And the carburetor bolts right onto the the head. So that's kind of neat. So anyhow, that's the top side. Now let's look at the bottom side. So this is what they consider the F head. Look at these valves. These suckers are 2 inches in diameter for intake valves. Here's your spark plug holes. And then your exhaust valves that you see in the block follow this lead right here. So this is somewhat of a high compression motor. I'm not sure what it's probably only 8-to-1. I haven't looked it up, but it's higher than the flathead. And like I said, I think it produces 80 to 85 horse, which is probably conservative because these things, they move right along. I mean, that Jeep Wagon, I can run that thing 60, 70 mile an hour all day long. And it's its happy spot, unless it's got, you know, burnt valve. But anyhow, so that's what that one looks like. And like I said, we'll get this one off to a machine shop. We'll get this redone and we can put that back in. I actually took this motor out back in October. I didn't film it because I thought, well, that was boring, but we'll film it going back together in the first run. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Restoration Blog. You got to see what I'm doing with my Jeep Wagon and my Victoria and Nash's Speedster. And like I said, we had some downtime here for health issues, but we're back to full swing of things here in June, making some more videos. Up next, I got a video of the Model T reunion in Richmond, Indiana. Will be the next video after this one, and you be sure to watch that. It's a good one. We're going to learn all about the alphabet cars. Did you know Ford had their own alphabet? They started with A, they went to T, and they come back to A again, for like the Model A. But we're going to go in depth on those alphabet cars. That was the I guess you'd call it the prototypes to the Model T. It was the first cars that Ford sold. Very interesting history. I've got some Ford historians that showed up there at the museum that gave a talk. I think we can hear it pretty good. But that's going to be the next video, and you'll get a kick out of that. So be sure to watch. And remember, drive them if you got them, even if they're broke. Maybe you could have somebody push me, and I can steer like like on the R-Gang comedy. You used to have a horse in the back, and they'd hook it up, and they'd push it an old Model T. Classic show. We'll see ya. So I might have been poking fun at myself all through the video and moving advantages, but this is what I actually come out of the procedure with. This is all there was. I only wore this for 1.5 days just to control bleeding. And then after that, voila, I was free of that. Really didn't have any pain at all. I did have some gum pain, which they said you'd have. That's why I alluded to the toothache. I felt the need to brush my teeth. I must have brushed my teeth 105 times last week. They just felt dirty all the time. So they should be whiter now. Anyhow, what's that test? You use a napkin to see how white they are. I was going to use a brown napkin. That way they look really white. Maybe this blue thing. Anyhow, I'm back up and running. Nothing serious. Just got a rotor job. We'll see you next time. 300 cubic inch. Conservative. Hand crank.